There are moments in history when warfare changes, not because of a new weapon, but because of something the enemy cannot see. No warning on radar, no interception, no defense, just a strike that appears out of nowhere and disappears the same way. During the Cold War, that idea seemed almost impossible. Every aircraft could be tracked, every movement detected, every mission anticipated. But then, something changed. A new kind of aircraft emerged, one that didn't rely on speed or altitude or firepower alone. It relied on invisibility. This is the story of the stealth revolution, the moment when the United States developed an aircraft that radar could barely detect and changed warfare forever. This is the story of the F-117 at the height of the Cold War. Air power was one of the most critical elements of military strategy. Bombers carried nuclear payloads. Fighters protected airspace. Reconnaissance aircraft gathered intelligence. And all of it depended on one thing: detection. Radar systems had become increasingly advanced, capable of tracking aircraft at long distances, guiding interceptors, directing surface-to-air missiles. By the 1960s and 70s, the skies were no longer safe for any aircraft. The Soviet Union had built one of the most sophisticated air defense networks in the world. Layered radar coverage, missile systems, interceptor aircraft ready to respond within minutes. For the United States, this created a serious challenge. How do you penetrate a defense system that can see everything? Because traditional solutions had limits. Flying higher made you more visible. Flying faster gave less reaction time, but didn't eliminate detection. Electronic countermeasures could confuse radar, but not completely defeat it. Every approach was being countered. Every advantage reduced over time. And that meant one thing. If the United States wanted to maintain air superiority, it needed something entirely different. Not faster, not higher, but invisible. The concept wasn't new. Reducing radar visibility had been explored for years. But turning that idea into a practical aircraft was another matter entirely. Because radar doesn't see like the human eye. It doesn't rely on shape alone. It detects reflections, signals bouncing back from an object. To become invisible to radar, you didn't just need to hide. You needed to control how those signals behaved. That meant designing an aircraft unlike anything ever built. Sharp angles, flat surfaces, a structure that would deflect radar waves away from their source, instead of reflecting them back. It was counterintuitive, unstable, and at first, barely understood, but it worked. And if you're interested in Cold War stories like this, where breakthroughs didn't just improve warfare, they redefined it, consider subscribing, because what this aircraft would soon prove was that the most powerful advantage in combat is the ability to strike without ever being seen. Turning that concept into reality required more than theory. It required risk, because the designs that reduced radar visibility created new problems. The aircraft was unstable, difficult to control. Unlike traditional designs that relied on smooth curves and aerodynamic efficiency, this new approach was built on sharp angles and flat panels. It didn't want to fly, at least not in the way pilots were used to. Early models revealed just how challenging it would be. Without constant correction, the aircraft could quickly lose stability. Control had to be precise, continuous, and far faster than any human pilot could manage alone. That's where another breakthrough came in. Digital flight control systems. Computers capable of making constant adjustments in real time, stabilizing the aircraft, keeping it in controlled flight, something that would have been impossible just years earlier. This combination, stealth design and computer-assisted flight, made the aircraft viable. But it also meant that everything had to work perfectly, because if the system failed, the aircraft wouldn't just be harder to fly. It could become uncontrollable. Still, the potential was too important to ignore. Development continued in extreme secrecy. Test flights conducted in remote locations, hidden from public view, hidden even from most of the military itself. Because what was being built wasn't just another aircraft. It was a completely new category of warfare. The F-117 didn't look like anything else in the sky. Angular, dark, almost unnatural in its shape, designed not for visual appeal, but for function. Every edge, every surface, every angle calculated to reduce detection. Even its materials played a role. Special coatings designed to absorb radar signals, further reducing its visibility. The result was an aircraft that could operate where others could not, penetrate heavily defended airspace, approach targets that would be too dangerous for conventional aircraft, and do it with a level of stealth that changed the equation entirely. But stealth alone wasn't enough. The mission still required precision, because once inside enemy airspace, the aircraft had to strike quickly, accurately, and then leave without being detected. That meant advanced targeting systems, guided munitions, technology that allowed a single aircraft to hit critical targets with minimal exposure. It wasn't about large-scale bombing. It was about precision, hitting key locations, disabling systems, creating openings, because the goal wasn't just destruction, it was control, the ability to shape the battlefield before the enemy even realized what was happening. As testing continued, confidence grew. The aircraft could fly, it could evade radar, it could deliver its payload, and most importantly, it could survive. But there was still one question that remained. Would it work in real conditions against a real defense network? Because theory and testing could only go so far. Eventually, the aircraft would have to prove itself, not in isolation, but in combat. And if you're interested in Cold War stories like this, where innovation is pushed to its limits before it's ever revealed a world, consider subscribing, because what the F-117 would soon demonstrate was something no system had ever achieved before. Because for the first time, an aircraft would enter defended airspace, strike its target, and leave without ever being seen. When the F-117 was finally deployed, it didn't arrive with headlines. There were no public announcements, no official confirmation. For years, it operated in silence, hidden programs, classified missions, an aircraft that existed but was rarely acknowledged because its greatest advantage depended on one thing: secrecy. If the enemy didn't know how it worked, they couldn't defend against it. But eventually, the moment came when secrecy alone was no longer enough. The aircraft would have to prove itself, not in testing, not in controlled environments, but in real combat against one of the most heavily defended airspaces in the world. When the F-117 was used operationally, the objective was clear: penetrate, strike, exit, without detection, without interception, without warning. And for the first time, the theory of stealth would be tested under real conditions. The aircraft approached its target at night. Dark sky, minimal visibility, reducing every possible chance of detection. Below, radar systems scanned continuously. Missile batteries waited. Defenses that had been designed to track and destroy incoming aircraft. But this time, the system was facing something it had never encountered before. A target that didn't behave like a normal aircraft. Radar signals returned weak, inconsistent, difficult to track. Operators saw something, but not enough. Not enough to lock on. Not enough to guide a response. Inside the cockpit, the pilot followed the mission profile precisely. Course, altitude, timing, everything calculated to maintain the aircraft's advantage. Because stealth wasn't absolute, it reduced detection, but it didn't eliminate risk. Every movement had to be controlled. Every second mattered. The aircraft reached its target, positioned itself, and released its payload. Precision-guided munitions directed at critical infrastructure, command centers, air defense systems, targets that would shape the battlefield. The strike was executed, accurate, effective, and then the aircraft turned away, climbing back into the darkness, exiting the area. Without interception, without engagement, the defenses remained active, but they had never fully seen what was happening. For the first time, a heavily defended airspace had been penetrated, without triggering an effective response. It was a moment that confirmed everything, that the concept worked, that stealth was real, that an aircraft had operated in environments once considered too dangerous. But it also revealed something deeper, that the nature of air warfare had changed. Because detection had always been the first step, see the target, track it, engage it. But if the target couldn't be seen, that entire process broke down. And if you're interested in Cold War stories like this, where a single breakthrough reshapes entire strategies, consider subscribing, because what the F-117 had just proven was that control of the battlefield didn't begin with firepower. It began with visibility, or in this case, the lack of it. But even as the aircraft proved its effectiveness, the implications were only beginning to be understood, because once one side gains an advantage like that, the balance begins to shift. In the end, the F-117 didn't replace every aircraft. It didn't make traditional air power obsolete overnight, but it changed something far more important. It changed the rules, because from that moment forward, detection could no longer be assumed. Air defense systems that had once relied on visibility were now facing uncertainty. Radar networks that had been designed to track everything in the sky now had gaps, and in those gaps, opportunity existed. The F-117 proved that a small number of aircraft used with precision could achieve results that once required entire formations. It showed that striking key targets, command centers, radar systems, communication nodes, could disrupt an entire defense network, not through overwhelming force, but through targeted action. For the United States, this represented more than technological advancement. It was a strategic shift, the ability to operate inside denied airspace, to act first, to shape the battlefield before a larger conflict even began. And it reinforced something that had defined American strategy throughout the Cold War: innovation, the willingness to invest in ideas that seemed unconventional, to pursue solutions that others might overlook, and to turn those ideas into operational capability. At the same time, the existence of stealth forced a response. Adversaries began adapting, developing new detection methods, exploring different frequencies, trying to find ways to counter what they could no longer see clearly. Because once the advantage was revealed, it became a target. But that is the nature of technological progress. Each breakthrough creates a new standard, a new expectation, and a new race to catch up. Still, the impact of the F-117 extended beyond its immediate use. It paved the way for future systems, more advanced stealth aircraft, improved designs, better integration of technology and strategy. Because once the concept had been proven, it could be expanded, refined, applied in new ways, and its influence can still be seen today. In modern air forces, in advanced aircraft designs, in a continued emphasis on reducing detection, because the lesson remained clear: if you can operate without being seen, you control the engagement, you decide when and where to act, you dictate the terms. That was the legacy of the stealth revolution, not just an aircraft, but a new way of thinking about warfare. Because in the Cold War, the most powerful advantages were often the ones that remained hidden, the ones that changed the balance before anyone realized it had shifted. And the F-117 did exactly that. It didn't just fly missions. It demonstrated a new reality, one where visibility was no longer guaranteed, and where the side that could remain unseen held the advantage. For more stories like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because some of the most important moments in history didn't happen in plain sight. They happened in the shadows, where technology and strategy quietly changed the course of the world.